Okay, so we're going to go over making a few selections and deleting pixels. The first one is the rectangle selection tool. I just opened up this JPEG selection tools. If you just make a selection, and if you hit delete, and you get this little pop-up window, what it's asking you to do is to fill in your pixels with a certain color. The reason why it's not allowing you to delete them is because your layer is still locked. So if you just double click the layer, hit OK, it now unlocks it. So now when you hit the delete key, it'll actually delete the pixel and you should see the checkered background. To get rid of your selection, you can go to deselect or use the shortcut Control D or Apple D. I'm just using my shortcuts for navigation. Just a few extra tools or extra settings with the selection tool is if you make a selection and you hold down the shift key, you see a little tiny plus sign. That means you can add to your selection. Just click and drag and make sure you include part of your previous selection, and it allows you to add to your selection. And you can delete those, Control D, or you could also subtract from your selection. So if you already have something selected, you hold down the Alt key and you drag another selection over it, and it subtracts from the selection that you currently have. I'm going to delete those, Control D. Another feature with selection, I'll make a quick selection here. By default so far, you've noticed everything we've been selecting and deleting has like sharp edges to them, and that's because we have a feather of 0. But say for example if you do 10 and you make a new selection and you hit delete, Control D, what feather does is it, from where you had your selection, it goes 10 pixels in both directions. It's kind of like offset, and it feathers the way that it starts to delete the pixels. Normally I do this as after the fact, mainly because I never know how much feathering I want. So I always leave this at 0. I make my selection however I want, and then I go back and I use the feather command. So I never know if I want a smaller feathering radius. And I can always just see what it looks like. I can delete the pixels. Or I can go back to my history and go to select, modify, feather, or I can just make a larger feathering radius. And Command D. So that's essentially the way the feathering command works. And the basic selection tool. There's a few others, but the rectangle one is pretty common. Another one that's pretty common is the lasso tool, but more importantly is the polygon lasso tool. The way that one works is it essentially follows your mouse clicks. So if I start to make just a couple random clicks, and if I go back to where I started, on my icon I see a little circle, and if I just click there, it essentially makes my selection. And I can delete those pixels. Or if I start clicking and I forget where I made my first click, if I just double click somewhere, it automatically, from where my mouse is located, where I made my last click, it'll automatically close it off. And I can then delete those. If you're making a selection and you accidentally click in the wrong spot, as long as you hit the delete key and continue to hit the delete key, it will undo your previous clicks. And you can essentially go back to the beginning if you wanted to. Also with this polygon lasso tool, you could also use the Alt and Shift or Alt and Shift keys to add to your selection, or the Alt key to subtract from your selection. Another few extra ones are the Quick Selection tool and the Magic Wand tool. But for now, we're going to just stick with the Polygon Lasso tool. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to make a selection around this person, so we can use them if we wanted to in a different, and for example, one of your renderings. So kind of clean this up here. Using the quick selection or the Polygon Lasso tool. Let's see, start up here. Making sure my feather is at a 0. With this lasso tool, you can get better precision, and I can delete those pixels. Essentially, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way around deleting all these pixels. Obviously, I can use the Magic Wand tool, and I can start to delete some of these pixels. Or I can use the quick selection tool. Essentially, I'm just clicking and dragging. And just hitting delete and Command D. Both of these tools work great, but sometimes they don't always select exactly what you want. So here, for example, I can quickly select that, delete those. But as soon as I get a little bit further, no matter how hard I try, the shading value between his pants right here and the sidewalk, it's too close, and it always selects this area. And the same with his shoes and the shadow. So for example, I want to delete the sidewalk and his shadow area, and it's always going to select part of his shoe and part of the shoe. So in these cases, it's always good to know about this lasso tool, and to know about the Shift and Alt commands. So I can say I want to get rid of this part of the selection. And I can deselect that part, and I can deselect this part. I can delete those pixels. Where it gets really tricky to use these tools is where you have, for example, this grass or this foliage, because the color value changes pretty rapidly within here. Even if I were to use the Magic Wand tool, it takes too long to to make that selection. And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just clicking in. I'm on the quick selection tool, and I'm just clicking and dragging. And it very quickly adds to the selection, but you can see it automatically selected the cane. I would want to go back and make sure I don't delete the cane. So essentially, once you're done with all those tools, the selection tools, what you should have is just the person by themselves, which you can then copy and paste into your rendering to start to populate your rendering with people.